I can just always come back. And I remember my father saying, no, you've made a commitment and you will live into that commitment. And you will spend 4 years in America at getting a degree, and then you will come home.
Yeah.
And it wasn't so much, it was a kind of the harsh reality of it so much as it was tough love. And, I've talked to him since, and it was clearly just I knew that that's what you needed to hear at the time because, there are times in life where if I had to come over here and just had a terrible experience my first week, and for clarity, I'd never even been to Kansas City. I accepted the scholarship without even going to the
So
city.
there was no traveling.
There was no tour. I mean, I'd been to America with my family and done the Disney thing in California. I'd never gone to Kansas City. So if I came over, had one bad week, and said, "Oh my gosh, I'm packing my bags. I want to come home," it would have spoiled my adventure and spoiled my opportunity. And I think he understood that and wisely said, "Hey, just make the commitment." And I think it was what I needed to commit to the process.
Have you ever read the book Grit?
No.
So there was a story of Steve Young, right? Because he was playing for BYU, and he was having a miserable time, right? Because he was like, I think, the third string quarterback, and he called his dad, like, "Hey, this football thing's not for me. I want to come home." And his dad basically said, like, "Yeah, you can do whatever you want, but you're not coming home."
Like that sometimes, part of parenting, and obviously now as a parent of a 15 and a 13-year-old, you don't get to say the sexy thing, the friendly thing all the time. Sometimes the tough love is what they need to hear.
Yeah. All right. So you're back home talking to your uncle about Rich Dad Poor Dad, but you didn't invest in New Zealand.
No.
You're investing here. You at least wait till you graduated college before you start investing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it was a passion. It was kind of fueling a desire. I was starting to read more books about real estate. And then I stayed on and got my MBA, which was great. And came out of there. And while I was getting my MBA, worked with my future father-in-law in a small advertising venture to do with the airline industry. September 11th killed that business. And during that time period, I'd successfully bought and sold one house, made decent money that allowed me to okay, maybe this is not just a if and maybe it's a reality, and let's go see what happens.
Well, you're very fortunate to have that. Can this be real? Actually become real before everything kind of started falling apart. So then you just jumped right. You just went all in, shoved all your chips in the middle.
I paid $5,000 on a credit card at the time to go down and get trained up on buying houses, on the foreclosure process, buying houses on the courthouse steps. How do you do it? There's a guy down in Springfield, Missouri, Larry Holder. I don't even think he's around anymore, but he was teaching people how to buy on the courthouse steps and a little bit about real estate and leasing and all that kind of thing. So paid $5,000, went down there and invested in myself, make sure I do it the right way. Came back to Kansas City. I went to the courthouse steps and I realized there's no one here. It was just me and a couple of other guys.
Yeah.
And once I learned, the art of buying distressed assets, undervalued assets, it was hard to go wrong. And quite honestly, Steve, it was, it was the glory days, right? I mean, now there's 50 people on the courthouse steps, and even the hedge funds are buying on the steps. But back then, it was a gold mine. It was fun.
Did you have to run into a good old boys network at that time?
No, not so much. I mean, there was an initial breakthrough, but once you proved that you had the capital to buy, and you proved that you had the staying power, and you were going to be there, and you weren't just hey, I'm going to see what happens and then leave. Once they knew I was there to stay, there was a good group of us, and that was, 17 years I've been on the steps, so it's only been the last 3 that I've shied away from that.
How long did it take to break into it? Because you mentioned you had to show it, but because the nightmare stories is always with the Good Old Boys Network was if you want to bid, then they're just gonna both outbid you, right? So that you couldn't do it, so you couldn't buy, so that you would be so discouraged you'd never come back again.
Unfortunately, when you do that against someone who's super competitive, all that does is, build my resolve.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it was, with those, it was back in the day, it was, you had to physically go to the auctions. You had to drive by the house ahead of time. So sometimes the opening bid for auction would not come in until just a couple hours before. So I might be up late at night till 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, researching all the things, finally find that an opening bid came in of $20,000 on a $150,000 house. I'm like, man, I got to run out and check out that house. And so I would get up early, drive to the house early, and be at the auction's at 9 a.m. So you drive out there, check it out, do the due diligence, and I was first to market and hustled my way into that arena.
That's awesome. And then roughly when was this?
This is around 2002 and 3 and 4.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
So 2002 was my first courthouse steps acquisition.
and that was the first you started buying directly from the auctions. You
What
didn't
the
go
first deal I did was like actually a referral. I just kind of said, yeah, I'm getting into real estate. And this guy kind of gifted me it was a new home builder that gifted me a house that was like, hey, I've got a trade in. Do you want to take a look at it? And it was distressed. And I'm like, sure. And I'm in there painting it and fixing it up, the first time you do. So that was my first one. But after that, it was, all courthouse steps after that. I just saw this massive chasm of an opportunity, an opening, and I just went and jumped in.
All right. So then did you, at this point, you're a solopreneur, young. You just did everything. Did you start building out a team? Because, we've talked about entrepreneurship and talent and everything. Like, what was young Mark's experience, inexperienced, naive Mark? Like, how was that experience?
Yeah, no, I was smart enough to know that I was never going to be the guy swinging a hammer and nail. Call it too proud or just not, or too dumb because I didn't know all about houses. I'd never owned a house before. But no, I saw my ability to go find the deals, source the deals, and then sell the deals on the back end as my main staying power, and then the rehabbers, I let them do their thing. So all about collaboration and finding the right partner on the rehab side was right from the get-go.
And then how, in your best year buying at the auction steps, what was your best year?
Just volume-wise, I've bought 134 on the courthouse steps.
In 1 year?
Yep.
All right. So, and then when did you change that model, or when did you adjust that
model?
Yeah,
so clearly the thing for me was when auction.com came in and started offering up all of the information to people just at the click of a button. It used to be where someone would drive by a house and see that it was like abandoned and weeds and run down, or maybe not even run down, but just weeds and disheveled and vacant. And they would think, how can I get that house? But they wouldn't know. Now you just type in an address and they'll say, yeah, the auction's on Thursday in 2 weeks' time,
Right.
Because auction.com's done an amazing job of really catering to that clientele base. So that changed. And suddenly we suddenly saw going from, 3 guys on the courthouse steps to 6 to 10 to 20. And suddenly it got so ultra competitive. I would go, we were so dialed in. This is, 15 years from when I first started. So we're really dialed in. So we were still going, but we were getting outbid by $20,000, like over our max bid. I mean, I don't know even how they were making money. So at that point, you're like, okay, I got to pivot. And we did successfully.
Gotcha. All right. So before I ask you how you pivot, let me ask you, because I think we're way past the statutes of limitations. How many B&Es did you commit buying auction houses?
The great thing about HUD is that they are not too sharp. They just have one set of keys. And as soon as you get your hands on those set of keys,
just need that one, or that one lockbox code.
Or that one lockbox code. There was a few lockboxes, or that were broken into, and the way I viewed it in my mind was simply, in a perfect world, we'd obviously clearly only do it on vacant properties,
right?
And if the banks had their way, they would want me to go into the house to see how much I could pay for it, to try and give them as much money for they could on the back end.
Right.
So. But yeah, no,
we're doing them a favor.
We're doing them a favor. It was a little bit of this and that, but no, in most part, I always say, if you're walking around the exterior of a home, Steve, and this is a good one for people that are getting into the market now, and a good tidbit for someone that's first starting. You can see the foundation, the roof, the windows, the siding, the AC unit, which gives you an indication of the heat on the inside. And at the end of that, we quit doing any crazy things like that, really, because we're like, look, we know we're going to do all new flooring, all new cabinets, all new countertops, appliances, granite. I mean, it's just math, right? So IJM is our little saying in our office. It's just math. So $17K for the inside, and everything else you can see the tragic on the outside, and you're pretty much there.
Yeah, I only bring that up just because when we were doing a lot of auctions back then, it's like, all right, who's going to go into the property? I don't want to do it, right? So who's going to go? And that was always that kind of had to take turns kind of deal. All right, so you pivoted. You said around 2006?
No, so I was buying on the courthouse steps all the way up until 2017, and that's when
until 2017.
Yeah. We were buying all the way up. Okay. And then it was because auction.com really gained power in about 2015, 16. And
got it.
And so, but now just for perspective, our best year was 134 houses on the courthouse steps. And this year we will buy 0.
Yeah. Well, I know there was a time where we was like, this is no point. And it was, I want to say it was around like 2013, 2014. No, maybe it was later. It was when all the hedge funds started buying, right? Once Blackstone started buying, it was like, well, what's the point? And like for us, we would look at it like it was listed as a short sale for 140, and no one paid it, and then they would pay for 170, and it was like, I can't compete because they're willing to pay over market
Mm-hmm.
at the courthouse steps.
But hey, who's smiling now? Those were great buys then, right? I mean,
Those were great buys.
so you got at the time you're thinking these guys are crazy. Now we're like, I would love to go back and pay those prices. So
There are homes that I've shown over here in Maryvale in West Phoenix. I sold multiple homes between 40,000 and 70,000. Those things are going for over 300.
unbelievable.
Man. Only we were smarter.
Well, and that, honestly, I mean, that is one of my big messages. I mean, obviously, as a turnkey provider, we're selling assets to investors all day long. And, some of them, that are not well trained will come in and say, well, is it really worth that? Or I feel like I'm paying market value. And I said, look, if you're buying and holding for 20 years' time, you're just going to look back and wish you had bought more. I mean, it is what it is.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that we were talking over lunch. There's a rule of thumb you like to use as far as if you buy so many properties.
Sure. So, for all those rookie investors, one of the things that I did well that changed my life, changed my family tree, truly, was for every 3 or 4 properties that I would buy, I would hold one.
Mm-hmm.
And it's painful because you're turning down cash. It's
Turning down revenue.
It's just money in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got to think of it in terms of, what do they say? Delayed gratification is a sign of maturity. And there's never more so than in real estate.
Yeah.
If you can just, forego that wholesale fee of 10 grand or 20 grand or whatever it is to hold on to that asset and own it for the next 10 or 20 years, it's the biggest no-brainer. You can't lose.
There's a reason why people are buying what you're selling. So, all right. So you did the pivot. So what was that pivot?
So the pivot for us was we were getting outbid on the courthouse steps, and that was drying up. Luckily, I'm a part of a real estate mastermind group, which is where I met you, obviously, Collective Genius,
Right.
which we kind of liken to an insurance policy almost, because when you're going through tough times, you want to surround yourself with people that have been there, done that, or have the answers. And clearly, I was one of the few that were really buying on the courthouse steps. There's probably only maybe 10 of us in CG that had any great experience buying on the courthouse steps. Most of them were just sending out mail. And I'm like, mail? Like, you mean people actually answer postcards to say, call me? This can't work.
Right.
But we pivoted to that. Obviously now we've blown it up and we have just we are committed to multiple channels for acquisition. Mm-hmm. So we currently get 50% of our deal flow from wholesalers. We love wholesalers bringing us deal flow. In fact, one of our a great thing we're very, very proud of at the office, in fact, I think we even got T-shirts, I should have worn it today, made of it, is that in 2020, we paid out over $1 million in wholesale fees. And we love that. Like, I don't resent that. I love that, right? Yeah. Like, I want to pay out $2 million next year. So we get a lot of deal flow from wholesalers, but also realtors, those soft referrals. But we are advertising on television, billboard, and then advertising through letters and postcards and flyers and yard signs. I mean, you name it, we try and do it all at a very professional standard. The one thing we don't do is we try not to do the ugly postcards and the signs on the corner and the things that are just, I feel, take it down a notch. We are a professional organization. And I think that's one of the things that real estate investors can get thrown into that little slimy bucket because they kind of do things and cut corners and B&E, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
But, we have 4 core values. One of them, and the first and foremost, is professionalism. And I try to say to our group, look, our clients, our high income, high net worth individuals are looking to diversify out of the stock market into real estate, have options. One of the options is to invest with Edward Jones or Merrill Lynch or UBS and Payne Weber, right? They can go put their money there, or they can choose SPD through mistake-free real estate and invest in us. So let's think of ourselves as real estate financial advisors, not real estate investors.
Yeah, and the positioning there is so crucial, right? Because it goes with your image, your branding. So when people are looking at you, they're like, okay, this is professional organization. I think the branding is absolutely important. So you mentioned $1 million in fees, and you're hoping to pay $2 million this year. So probably we should discuss what markets you're in if people wanted to send you deals.
Oh, I would love to. Thank you. So currently, obviously, we are based in Missouri, in Kansas City. So that's Kansas and Missouri. We're in the Quad Cities up in Iowa, Illinois area. And then we're actively in Montgomery, Birmingham, Huntsville, in Alabama. And now growing into, soon to be rolling out at the end of this year, we'll be into the kind of the midsection, the central region we're calling it, which is the Northwest Arkansas. So Fayetteville, Rogers, Springdale, and then Northwest Arkansas, and then Tulsa and Springfield, Missouri.
I don't think I ever heard anyone say they're in Arkansas.
Dude, love this area. So Walmart has actually poured so much money and time and effort. That's one of the ones that's like everyone else is kind of looking at the. I'm like, no, we're going here because it's hot. California, not physically, but Californians are flocking to Northwest Arkansas. Obviously, it's the home for Walmart, so that's where most of the corporate exec jobs
is that what
go.
it is?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So Rogers, Arkansas is where Walmart is headquartered. So they've poured tons of money into the Parks and Rec, really high outdoor, almost feels like Colorado, like tons of outdoor activities and things. It's beautiful.
Yeah, so you mentioned Tulsa because it was you and I were having a conversation, right? Like we both are working with 1-800-SELL now, and Darren just kind of like, oh yeah, by the way, you don't have Tulsa. Like, what do you mean? No, when we started this conversation, I was in Oklahoma. He's like, no, you don't have Tulsa. Like, what happened?
You knew.
And then I was like, oh wait, it's probably Mark and Chris. All right, fine, whatever. But yeah, I think that's awesome.
Yeah, 1-800-SELL now is a big. That was a pivot for us as well. You know, it's hard to go to once we knew, and we were going to put our foot on the accelerator, and we can talk about that because that's not something to take lightly. Like right now, we're putting our foot heavily on the accelerator pedal, and that was not something I would do on my own. But once we knew we were going to these markets, it's not an if, it's a when. And so we have secured 12 markets around the Midwest that we're going to go attack with the 1-800-SELL Now brand. So we're excited.
Definitely putting your foot to the metal. So before we go into the expansion part, let's take a step back because you're talking about collective genius and you're mentioning like you had to make a pivot, so you had to be in this room with these other guys. And one question I've been getting recently is like, what are you going to do when the market shifts? Because everyone's kind of anticipating this market shift. I'm not really anticipating this market shift, but they're asking these questions and they're like, I've been doing this since 2007. You've been doing this since 2001, right? And they're like, what experience are you bringing here? And I said, honestly, what we're going through right now is absolutely unprecedented. And so I don't know anyone that has the answers, but I'm very grateful. I'm going to be in a room full of other really smart guys that we're going to figure out the answers together.
Yeah, so an analogy there, Steve, would be March of 2020. There was like, COVID is happening. They're shutting down offices. We may not be able to work. Tenants may not pay rent. Landlords will be mad at us. We won't be able to buy anymore. We won't be able to go into living rooms to buy deals. What are we going to do? You remember those first like on deck calls at CG?
There was a lot of stress.
Hands on deck. I think we broke Zoom, right? Like so many people on there, but we gained clarity. We had a plan. We put it together, and we all won together. And it was. I think the same thing will happen. I have zero stress about the market. I think we've got tons of runway, but B, I know that. For us in particular, we have a business that transcends any market cycles. Because we provide a value-add service. We're not trading paper or doing anything, but we are buying, rehabbing, renting out, property managing, and selling those assets to our end-user investors. So I think that's something that will stand the test of time.
So direct mail was the first pivot, and you've committed to more marketing channels. Were there any other pivots?
Well, there was a huge mental pivot. Okay, so so the one thing you've stepped over, which, I certainly don't need to dwell on, but I will say that, it wasn't all roses, right? I want to be clear that no one has that rosy, perfect business cycle. From 2001 through 2007 and 2008, I had two silent business partners that were, kind of bankrolling the operation. And that ended in a business divorce. The only ship that never sails is a partnership. Very true for my tent there. So I got voted off the island, 2-1, which was a hard pill to swallow. But then that was my biggest pivot ever, right? It's like, okay, I'm back to nothing. Everything's been taken away from me. We had 120 rentals at the time that were just gone.
You got forced out.
With
nothing to show for it.
Nothing to show for it. Other than they finally, after not paying my mortgages for 3 months, right? They finally paid down those mortgages and we walked away. So yeah, that was a massive time in my life where it was, because then you have those conversations with your wife and family and friends like, oh, real estate didn't work out. I'm like, no, it's been going fine. I just got absolutely dealt a tough one. And so that's when I pivoted and said, no, I got this. It was my operation. I was 100% the operations guy. So I already had my rehab crews. So all I did was pivot And that's really when the turnkey model, before I knew what turnkey was when I pivoted to start using other people's money to do the transactions. Only I was just a service provider. So those.
What warranted, in their mind, voting you off the island?
Mate, that is honestly a whole nother podcast.
It
is
can we just
greed.
Okay.
Is that fair?
I think it's totally fair. So
greed.
They were totally short-sighted.
One of them lost their job and panicked. They were best friends and said, "Hey, let's just park it right now and get them out."
Yeah,
it was bad.
Okay, so very malicious.
Very.
Okay, so that was what gave you the ability to jump out on your own.
So now I'm on my. I mean, I was on my own operationally. Now on my own financially and running it, and obviously, have transformed the way I would do business now, never giving up ownership of my assets. Happy to rev share, but it's not ownership, right? Big difference. So now I'm going down that path, and slowly and surely, I think a little, once bitten, twice shy. I probably didn't put my foot on the accelerator pedal as quickly as most CG guys do. I think the visionary maverick, like just hard charging, there's a lot of guys, like I've been doing it 20 years, and there's guys that are doing the same volume as us that have been in like 5 years, but they're rocky. They have their own issues. We slowly and organically grew this thing back up. Excuse me. And it was just this progression of, first buying for other people. And then when I'd make some money from that, I would, turn around and buy one for myself, and then go make some more money and buy one for myself. I was, we've always, my wife and I, bless her heart, we've always lived well below our means. And so we just poured our money into real estate from 2008 onwards. In fact, a little bit before that. And so we now have a, pool of rental property that's substantial. And that's been a good blanket of security to kind of fall back on.
So I want to talk about this mental pivot, because we did kind of gloss over it, but there is massive adversity, all industries, but we get to witness it all the time in real estate, right? Whether it's, like a deal that you're going to close, you've been working for 6 months, and it's like, finally get this big payday for your first deal, and then something came up and you don't close your first deal. So there's a lot of things, or you're trying to quit your job and you're expecting all this to work and it didn't go the way you're supposed to go. So there's a lot of adversity in this business. What did you do? Because it sounds like you got dealt a huge, tremendous blow. How did you overcome that adversity?
I mean, I burned the boats. I was on I didn't have any other option. I knew I had a proven track record of success. So that's kind of the thing. It wasn't like the business failed. It was a hostile takeover. So my business model was sound. They weren't even in the market anymore. It's not like they came in and started doing what I was doing. They didn't know how to. They just took the assets. And so I was able to go and just keep doing what I was doing, use some other people's money, because that obviously, cut me off at the knees. And then I was able to just rebuild.
And you being the operator, you already had the reputation. So
100%. So
you could resume.
Honestly, a lot of people didn't even know. Like, it was just an internal, like, you cry in private and smile in public, right? Yeah. So it was, I shed some tears for sure.
Yeah. All right. So then down the road, you're growing. So, a lot of people that listen to the show, they go from never having done a deal, hoping to do the first deal, to doing maybe a couple deals a month, to some of these guys doing double digits a month. This part where you went from being a solopreneur to being in multiple states, like, what is that journey like?
Yeah, that is where a massive pivot, right? And I would not do it without the right team around me. And so I made a big decision in 2018 to hire an integrator. As a solopreneur, I think you have to just start with the end in mind. You've got to think, where do I really want to go? Am I happy just doing, 40, 50, 60 deals a year, maybe even 100. It seemed like at 100, have a little bit of stress and the speed wobbles. But,
I picture like 100 on your own, you're like the Prius with a donut wheel.
Yeah. So you have to decide, where do I want to get to? And I'm just a guy I see other people, and that's the other thing about being in the room in CG, right? You see other people doing it. It's like, well, that guy's doing it. Let me talk to him. He seems like a normal guy. I could probably go do that. So it does give you a little bit of confidence. But I saw how he did it. And so, Dan Lane and Jeremy Fish were a pretty big inspiration to me, just seeing, wow, they just have it dialed in. They just focus on their business. They practice what they preach, and they're very calculated. They're very calm. They have a steady pace. They just follow up, and they have process and systems and procedures. And so I knew that I needed, and then honestly, a big thing for me when EOS came around, it gave us an overlay of structure. but I saw quickly I didn't have the exact right team in place. And specifically missing, after I read the book Rocket Fuel by Gino Wickman, that's when I'm like, oh my God, I am 100% visionary. And I suck at holding people accountable. I don't have systems. I don't have procedures. I don't have any manuals or things written down. Everyone's just like, it's a genius with 1,000 helpers model, right? And so I was struggling with that.
I don't think I've heard that before. It makes total sense.
It's just
it resonates very.
What
thoroughly.
does Mark want to do? We better go ask Mark. And you can't scale when every decision has to come through Mark. So now, I mean, I don't really get consulted. I hired Chris Johns, my COO, and he and I form a very good partnership. We're very much aligned on vision. We know where we're going to go. Our BHAG is 1,000 homes a year, and we know we can get there because there's already one company in the country doing it. But we want to get to 1,000 homes a year, and that's why we're going after 12 markets.
Yeah. And Chris is a really sharp dude. So when you were talking about hiring an integrator, you read Rocket Fuel, and you're going to hire an integrator. Chris is the guy we're talking about.
Yes.
Okay. So Chris is not a slouch. Chris is not someone you're going to find on Craigslist. So what did you have to do to get someone of Chris's caliber? I guess before we answer that question, just let the listeners know, what was Chris doing before you got him?
Sure. So Chris was a highly paid sales director for healthcare industry, right? So climbing the corporate ladder. I think he wouldn't mind me saying that he didn't love his job. He had to travel a lot, was on the road a ton. Because when you climb that corporate ladder, you suddenly get a region, right? It's not, you're not just in Kansas City, it's a region. Oh, you're so good, you're gonna own this region. And then it's like,
more
that sounds great, more responsibility. But suddenly, I think there was one year where he spent an equal number of, or maybe more nights in a hotel room than he did in his own bed. And that's where it's kind of like, man, with young kids. So he and I were golfing buddies while he was in Kansas City. He had moved down to Phoenix, still remained friends. Had never even considered him for that role because you figure he's enjoying what he's doing. But as I would, tell him more about our business, and he actually was an investor in our business as a turnkey, as an investor, buying our turnkey assets. So he knew our business model a little bit, and so we were able to come on board. But it was so. What happened? You asked what happened. What happened was I had to change my mindset. And I think a massive mistake that small business entrepreneurs make, or solopreneurs, is that when they go to hire, they pick a number, let's call it 40,000 of what they're willing to pay somebody, and they go get the best person at that rate. You got to flip the script. You say, clearly you have a budget, but you got to think, if I got to go get the most talented person that I can get, and then pay them whatever they want to get them on board within reason. So you go hire the most talented individual for that. You have a pay range rather than an amount. Right. And I think that was the thing. I was, clearly had to, open up the checkbook to get a guy of Chris's caliber on board, right?
Right.
So that was something that was uncomfortable, but, after wise counsel and talking to people and understanding what other big time COOs were making, found that it was the right thing to do. And clearly, it'll be 10X, right?
Right. So you were very fortunate that you guys were golfing buddies and a client. So if I were to say, hey, or not myself, but a friend of yours says, hey, I'm trying to hire and scale. I'm trying to get to 6 states, trying to do all these transactions. Where do I go find someone like Chris?
No, fair question. And I think the answer, again, for a professional organization is probably LinkedIn or Indeed, first of all. The second thing is you've got to look outside real estate. He didn't have any real estate experience. He'd owned a house. And he'd owned a couple of rental property, but he didn't know the business. But you don't need to know the business.
Right.
You need to know how to manage people and process and systems and overlay some level of accountability and company culture. It's building that up that really matters. And so just finding someone that has the right DISC or PI or CI index, whatever you want to call it, that would allow them to come in and be the right kind of operator. I think there's enough research around that concept now that someone could, that you could actually find the right personality type. Even just read the book Rocket Fuel. If you read the book Rocket Fuel, it has that little test in there, and if you just answer if that guy answers all those answers all those questions and says, I'm like off the charts integrator, there's a pretty good start. And then it's like making sure that you can work with them. Make no mistake about it, Chris runs our business. You have to be ready. So the next thing is, are you ready to elevate out of the business and think strategically. And, we wouldn't be in 12 states without Chris, but we wouldn't be in 12 states without me being able to elevate out of my day-to-day so I can go focus and think. One of the realizations that I had was, Randy Lawrence loves to say, it's easier to do than to think. And I suddenly gave myself permission to think.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to give myself permission because sometimes you just have a relaxing moment. And it's kind of the same thing with prayer or meditation. It kind of feels a little awkward sometimes. You're just sitting there and it's like, am I thinking about the right thing? Am I thinking? You've got to give yourself time, whether it be on the golf course or fishing or running or walking or spending time with your spouse or relaxing. As soon as your body gets away from the day-to-day and you can start thinking strategically, all of these ideas pop up and you have clarity.
Mm-hmm.
But the whirlwind and tornado of the day-to-day operations of a business is not where you find strategy and vision.
Absolutely.
And I think, the thing that Chris has done well, and my whole team, I have to praise my team because they know, there are some businesses, I'm sure, where if, the boss is not in the office, they think, oh, he's on the golf course or he's doing this or that or he's shirking. They know that if I'm in the office, they're not getting the most out of me. And they have freed me up to relax, spend time, and just think, which has been a blessing.
So, Chris's side, right? I think your competitive advantage is you've got amazing people. And something that you and I were talking about even before we started, you were mentioning to me, it's like, wow, you've got really talented people here. What are you doing to attract talent?
Wow. Never a more pertinent time to ask that question, because that is something we are extremely committed to. In fact, 2019, our mantra was hire talent. And that was all through 2019 was just hire talent, hire talent. We haven't taken our foot off that accelerator. In fact, we've even doubled down. Just recently, we even hired a director of talent acquisition and retention, with the idea that you not only have to hire talented people, but train them and coach them, because every person wants to bring out the best in themselves. And we have amazing people in the office, but they don't get much time with me. Right. They don't get much time with Chris. And you got to realize they can sometimes be in a silo. So you have to come together. You have to spend time coaching them, training them, making sure the best version of themselves. And so we now have a full-time person doing that. Secondarily, obviously in each silo, whether it be property management, give them education and further education. And acquisitions, a quick shout out. The Steve Trang training that you've done for our team has been instrumental in helping our people, become better in the living room and better at, sales over the phone, sales training. So you invest in the people and then provide a great atmosphere of fun. And it's hard to do, but I think it comes together when you have people of like mind that are competitive, that want to win, and you celebrate winning together.
Yeah, I think that's awesome.
I think, in the 4 dysfunctions of a team, Chris McChesney says it really well. He says, you give your employees a winnable game and then keep score, and you'll have success. And I like that one a lot.
I love that. Got to reread that. So you mentioned that you're not available necessarily, and Chris is not available because he's got an operation to run. And so this person, the recruiting and retention, is kind of their coach as well.
She is becoming that. I will say, Chris, it's been with me elevating out, it has been a lot on him.
I imagine.
Yeah. So no, to say Chris is not available, he has been extremely available. So, again, we're only 1 month into our hire of this person, but the idea is that she will live into what Chris has been doing extremely well.
Gotcha.
But, so he has been very one-on-one. Spending time with each individual employee. How are you doing? Where can we help you? What can we do better? Where are we winning? Where are you struggling? What can we? He's been that, but that can't be the role of the COO. So now we have a full-time person that will be living into that role. And again, with hand in hand with Chris. So now we have a male and a female in that role of both coaching, and I think it's a healthy place to be for the org.
Yeah, I think that's great because that's something that I was talking to Jason Lewis about. He signed up for our sales training, which is incredibly grateful, and he also has a one-on-one coach for each acquisition guy, right? Like he's hired a third party outside the organization to coach each person. Like, man, that's so awesome. Like that's the ultimate investing in your team. I think Ren's Bartlett does the same thing too.
They are great practitioners as well. Yeah, they're putting their foot on the accelerator too. It's kind of fun to see them.
Yeah. So let's talk about this, putting the foot on the accelerator. So what does putting on the foot accelerator mean, and what would it look like when you're done? So
what it means to us is recreating our business model in other markets. really it's not. I mean, we're not. It's probably a bad analogy in the sense that it sounds like you're getting out of control. I would not be comfortable. Let me say it this way: we've built the car. If you want the car analogy, we have built the car now where we can go fast and we don't get the speed wobbles anymore. It's enough to like, hey, quick, the check engine lights come on, boom, we fix it and we move on. Velocity of capital is a big deal in our business, meaning we have to turn houses quickly when you're doing 300 a year. And we're not wholesaling. We don't wholesale at all. We buy from wholesalers. We're rehabbing 300 houses this year, Steve.
That's crazy.
So, I mean, it's a big job, right? So
just for context, how many houses is that at a time?
There's
always some cycle.
Yeah, at any given month, so we average around just over 5.5 months of, so it's around 104 houses at a time. So,
all right, so go back to your
yeah. So we've got the analogy of the car, and so putting your foot on the accelerator to me means that we are now willing to expand and grow without stressing out the organization.
Yeah.
And so what that looks like is taking our operating procedures, our processes, and overlaying them in other markets where we know it's going to be a success. I'm one of those guys, I don't take risk, which sounds crazy because we're in this game of like, you buy low, you try and sell high, you hope you make money. It's like, no, we buy already knowing that it's sold on the back end. We don't really take risks. We know our investors are going to love these other markets. We have although we're going to flip, a couple of hundred full turnkeys this year, which are our rental properties. If we had 600, we could sell them with the demand for our product right now. And so really it's just living into the demand that's already there for our product. So it's kind of just ramping up production, knowing that the demand is already there, and knowing that the team will not be stressed by it. They'll be challenged, don't get me wrong. And we'll have to grow and hire, which is again why we hired the talent acquisition person, because we'll probably hire maybe 30 or 40 full-time employees in the next 24 to 30 months.
So how many employees?
We will grow, probably double our full-time headcount in the next 12 to 24.
Wow. And so kind of what you're talking about, it sounds like, a principle we heard a long time ago, which is reverse wholesaling. Find out what buyers are willing to buy.
Bingo.
And then go source that from wholesalers or the market.
Chris, Steve, that's exactly what we do. Chris and I sit down, we say, okay, if our investors are willing to buy at, say, a 7 cap, right, and in this market, well, you just go, it's IJM, it's just math. So then we come in and say, okay, we need to buy it for this because we know we're going to rehab it for that. We can sell it for this, and it's your margins are there.
And you got your buy box.
Yeah, and keep in mind, I mean, you don't get these massive rips, right? Like, a wise man once told me, a good friend of mine who has multiple businesses and plays golf nearly every day, quite literally, great business owner of multiple different like a boot company, a smoothie store. He's got a trash company, true business owner. He says, Lautour, I'm playing golf, just hitting singles all day while you're out there trying to hit home runs. He said this about 5 years ago, and it kind of sat with me, and I'm like, he's right. It's if you just go out and get base hit. In fact, I think Tim Bratz even commented something like that on Facebook a while back. Yeah. He said, just go get the base hits. You don't need to swing for the fences on every deal. And as you scale, it's all about just getting singles and as many singles as you can.
And every once in a while, those singles turn into a home run.
Well, and clearly right now in this market, they're turning into home runs.
A lot of people are looking really smart right now.
Yes.
All right, so let's go to some of these questions. So Michael Frank says you're a solid dude. Thank you, Mike, for that. Michael York, so he lived in Rogers, Arkansas for a short while, and they were building everywhere. So,
yep.
So Gavin Guglielmi, I'm hoping I'm reading this correctly. Can you live on Burr income? So could you build a lifestyle around Burr?
If I am taking his question as, obviously that Burr, it's tough right now in this marketplace. Back in the day, 100%, right? Easy. I mean, in fact, that was one of the business models I had was simply, using other people's money. I'd say, look, you're silly not to. We would, buy them a house, rehab it for them, get it rented out. They'd cash out refi. So use cash, but then cash out refi, pull out sometimes, all, if not maybe a little bit more of everything they had in it and just keep going. I think to address that question, I'm going to say this. I think one of the biggest, as a guy who sells turnkey real estate for a living, I will say that we coach all of our investors not to get swayed on passive income that is fully leveraged. I think one of the dirty little secrets in real estate is that leveraged assets at 80% leverage don't cash flow. I mean, who's going to live off $200 a month?
Right.
It's just not going to happen. You have to have so much scale to get to that point. And most people that are, trying to live off the cash flow don't have that kind of cash. It's only once they're paid off. So our investors are coached to buy, just 4 or 5 houses a year and just put 20% down, get 80% leverage, so scale with leverage, and then start to aggressively pay down debt. I think the ideal model for a turnkey buyer would be you have your active income, you pour whatever you can into those passive assets to build up your asset column, then start aggressively paying down your debt. Because only when it's paid off, or it's, majority of it is paid off, is it really life changing to where you could actually live off the cash flow.
Right. So I'm gonna ask a question. This might sound totally ignorant, right? Coming from Phoenix, we look over here, California, particularly. These guys are doing 40K assignment fees, 100K flips on a regular basis, and that looks sexy, right? No one knows how much it costs to do all that, but it looks sexy. And I look at all our friends in the Midwest, like, these guys are building real wealth through Burr. They're finding these properties, pulling out cash out refis. They don't even need an income because they're living off the cash out refis. You guys are building real wealth and have almost no taxable income because everything's depreciating.
Bingo.
So would you agree or disagree that it's easier to create wealth in the Midwest?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, easier to make bigger chunks of active income potentially in real estate in the bigger markets, just because you have, if you're talking percentages, your value of land and the sales price on the back end is just way, way bigger. But in the I think real estate is a crockpot business, not a microwave business. You're in the business of getting wealthy slowly over time, not getting rich quick. Because every time that you click over and accept some cash for a transaction, you're going to be chinked 30% for tax right off the bat.
Right.
And then you have nothing to show for it. It's just transactional. I'm trying to build wealth for our investor base. And that's just following the strategy that I did, just buy and hold assets. And 20 years later, everyone will be like, how did you do that overnight? It's like, no, this thing's been sitting in the crock pot for 20 years.
So if I were young and single, actually, because I actually made this a suggestion to someone that was in my sales training on Friday. He's like, I'm really frustrated in San Diego. I was like, how old are you? He's like, I'm 23, I think was what it was. Like, yeah, are you married? He's like, no. Kids? And I was like, then move out of San Diego, move in the Midwest, do a bunch of burrs, find properties, do cash out refis. And if you want to live in San Diego later on, go back.
Well, and in fairness, stay in San Diego. I'm a big believer in collaboration, right? Yeah. I believe collaboration over isolation is one of the keys to my success. I mean, inside CG, I've partnered with so many different avenues, from the direct mail to the training to television advertising to our name of our company now. And it's always been about collaboration. Why can the guy that not, hammer it out in San Diego making big reps, but just invest in the Midwest? We have investors from Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, China, the UK, all over the world, and they're investing in the Midwest.
Really?
Yeah. That was the biggest thing that turned us around in 2008, 9, and 10. The irony was that American investors that I knew were like, oh my God, I would never invest in real estate. Terrible. Have you not seen the crash that's happened, Mark? I'm like, why is it that when Walmart has a sale of 50% off, everyone goes rushing to the door? Yeah. But when real estate has a sale of 50% off, everyone's like, I would never touch real estate. Yeah. And I was just wise enough to say, that's an opportunity.
It's interesting because when, as a realtor in that time, I had a lot of Australian money buying real estate in the Phoenix market. They knew something we didn't know. All right. So Raylan says he loves the family tree line comment. Let's see what else is. If Benjamin Beck wants to know if you could have coffee with someone dead or alive, who would it be?
That's a good question. Have coffee with someone dead or alive, who would it be? Simon Sinek comes to mind. Tiger Woods. Obviously he's had his transgressions, but I just think he's such a mental giant. The things that he was able to do in his profession transcended sport. But yeah, Simon Sinek is someone I kind of look up to and will always consume his media. He is extremely wise.
He is.
And has great, it's for where I'm at in my life, right? Trying to lead people, it's hard. Like, that's one of the greatest challenges I have, is leading an organization of people that is just growing. Now we have 25 people in the office that are having to be led, and that's something that I wear with great respect.
Well, I think that's the hardest thing, and that's every person. Well, I take that back. Everyone initially has problems with marketing. Where do I find leads? Once you solve that, because it's really not that hard to solve that. Once you solve it, everyone struggles with people. It is the hardest. As the last frontier. Leo Aguirre wants to know, what is your why? What is pushing? What is pushing?
I kind of see myself at the pearly gates with a tablet that, I'll be sitting there with Jesus and he'll say something along the lines of, Mark, here's what you did and here's what I created you for. I just want to try and live up to getting those as closely aligned as possible. It's not a fear I have, but I just want to try and be the best version of myself. And so I put my heart and soul into being the best dad I can be, the best husband I can be, the best friend I can be. I'm a guy that does do those random acts of kindness. I try and, do everything I can to reach out to people. I want to be, dude, at my funeral, I hope they just pack the rafters because everyone just wants to come say goodbye, and just have that last memory. Like I enjoy life. I love what I do. I love, where I live. I'm not going to call it a regret, but the only challenge I have that I struggle with, Steve, is just I have a very tight-knit family in New Zealand, and it is hard being away from them for so long. And with COVID now shutting down the borders effectively, you have to go sit in a hotel for 2 weeks if you want to get in. It's been tough.
So you mentioned best father you can be, best husband. So what are you doing to be the best husband you can be, father you can be?
Time, right? Just got to spend time. And creating opportunities. When my daughter was young, I was the dad that, said, she wasn't an athlete. Jack and I have always had a great bond because he's a sporty kid. Throw the baseball, throw the football, go play golf, kick the soccer ball around. Just, obviously easy for a dad. But I was the dad that actually put on a costume and went and danced with my daughter on stage, because she loved dancing. I love taking her out on date days and just spending time. One of the things I do, to try and be the best husband I can be is just celebrate the wins. We recently celebrated our 20-year wedding anniversary and did it in style. Rented a lovely Jason Medley style house on the Pacific Ocean down in Puerto Vallarta, and had our best friends that were actually in our wedding come with us, and that was really special to us. So
that's also to have them in your wedding also.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's like, you have those moments. I mean, life is just a journey, but I love to celebrate along the way. And so I try to, obviously discipline and encourage my children, but just get them to love life, because life is not given. We had two people this year at our golf club, at the country club, passed away in their 50s. Life is not given. Tomorrow is not given. And so I do try to celebrate today as much as possible.
Louis Cartouche wants to know, what are your thoughts on college?
Wow, that's a loaded question. That is such a great question for me, because it's one I struggle with. I value college, but for different reasons. Like I think in the real estate industry, you could go, come to Steve Trang's training and get, go straight into the real estate industry. But I think at an age of 18 to 19, you're not fully matured. I think it gives you good social skills. I think it gives you a more worldly perspective. I think it allows you to kind of relax. I think you've just gone through, 12 years of schooling, kind of a grind. And then you're like, okay, I'm not really ready to go be a man or a woman. I don't really know what I want to do yet. I think college is that time period where you can let it out, have some fun, surround yourself with some really fun, loving people, while at the same time bettering yourself, learning about a specified field or craft that you want to get into, because there are real estate universities as well, as you know. So it's a time to mature. And I would say I will never discourage my children from, going to college. However, it's not the be all and end all. It is certainly not something that is, that's a must have for everybody. I was blessed. My parents, sacrificed a lot and actually, paid for us to go to private high school in New Zealand, the number one high school in New Zealand called King's College. And so that's where I learned, how lucky I was coming out of that experience, coming over to America, not really knowing if my high school grades would transcend or not, but I was certainly ahead of the field compared to the American students that came in, or at least not lagging. And so I think that's been great in us that, education is there to, it just has to be an all-around education. It has to be, in the arts. I love Broadway. I'm a huge Broadway fan.
Really?
Yeah. Like just theater. My brother is a world famous actor in New Zealand, is on #1 show in New Zealand. And
That's awesome.
so he's doing his thing. We've always had a fascination of the arts and the theater in our family. My dad's a great musician. So I think you can be more well-rounded if you allow yourself to be educated, all through life.
And Vincent asked, "Did you see your operation moving towards fund? Do you see your operation moving towards fund management in the future?"
No, but I do believe that he that controls the capital controls the market, and so we are not narrow-minded to think that we're only doing single-family homes. So currently we have a tranche of new home construction, build to rent, that we'll be offering our clients. We have our single family portfolio that's just, rehabbed properties. We have our multifamily portfolio and some syndication deals as well. So at the end of the day, what we are trying to do is cater to high income, high net worth individuals that are really kind of saying, hey, we want to invest in real estate, but no one's taking our money. No one's doing it professionally. They have to go do it themselves. And there's a massive void in the market to just click on a button, to make real estate as easy as clicking on a button and saying buy. And that's not there right now. And so we are trying to fill that massive void. And I think that's where we've found success, is that there are people that are willing to, pay for our service, gold star service, that will allow them to invest safely and securely and with good returns in whatever medium we choose.
Mistake-free
real estate.
Michael Santiago wants to know, who helped you create your mindset?
I'm a massive book reader. So, for those that don't, I think I'm going to trail behind it. My goal this year was to just read a book a week. But yeah, I've always read, and that's really where it started. But I think it also, there's a bit of upbringing. I think I don't want to shy away from giving my parents a massive tip of the cap, because my mother and father were so positive. They always just had that, yeah, you can do whatever you want. Hey, Mom, there's this guy that's going to play tennis in America on a scholarship. I think I might want to do that. Oh, great. Like, can you imagine your kid just flying across to Australia right now and living there forever? Like most parents in America, they're like, I would never do that. And my parents, yeah, if you want to do that, I support you. Mm-hmm. My sister, like, I want to go try and be a world-class triathlete. Okay, I support you. I'll get you up at 5 a.m. in the morning and then, take you to school and then take you biking in the afternoon and then go for your evening run. My younger brother, hey, I want to be a world-class actor and I want to go to acting school in New York. No problem, go do that. My older brother, he's like, hey, I want to go over to Camp America, do a summer camp. They just encourage us to explore the world, and you can do anything you want to do. So I think parenting is a massive responsibility.
It is.
Like, I take that on very seriously. Like, I want my kids to get the most out of life. And I think with the media and their cell phone usage and everything that comes along today, there's a bigger responsibility on parenting now, because you have a babysitter and an electronic device, and yet you don't get to tell the babysitter what you can tell your kids.
Right.
And so if you hit the easy button and just let them sit on that all day, watch out.
Yeah, who knows what's corrupting their brains. So Raylan Weiss wants to know, do you ever sell turnkey via owner financing?
Currently, no.
And then let's see. Andrew wants to know, if you were to start all over again, let's just say it's in 2021,
mm-hmm.
You're brand new.
Andrew's giving me a heartache right now. I couldn't do it.
What would be the first thing you do?
Wholesaling is kind of click that easy button to get in, right? If you don't have any money, wholesaling is a good way to do it. Surround yourself with people that, I would surround myself in a mini mastermind. People that are in a community that are doing the same kind of things. Whether it's a meetup, meetups are fine. Don't necessarily spend much time in them myself. But I think actually like more just getting 4 or 5 people that are aligned in mindset, and they meet and hold each other accountable and check each other's goals and KPIs. I think I would just start there and then just hustle and grind, man. Whenever way, I'd pick a niche and hammer it to death. That's, I think, one thing that I did well. I wasn't distracted. I just was like, hey, I'm a courthouse steps guy. That's all I buy is courthouse steps. And until that went away, 17 years, I'm just like crushing it on the courthouse steps, because that's all I knew how to do. But that's okay. Like, you don't need to be all things to all people. You can pivot a little bit or cater here and there, but keep the blinders on and just do one thing really, really well.
Keeping the blinders on is really hard when you're an entrepreneur.
Yes, sir.
How do you keep your blinders on?
How do you keep the blinders on? I would go back to accountability. I think you have to tell people, hey, help me keep the blinders. I need to focus on this. Don't let me go down this path. Whether that's a COO or as a solopreneur. That's why a solopreneur, it's hard to do because sometimes they think that they're on an island. And I felt that way, right? I felt that I could never open up to anybody in Kansas City because they were either a competitor or they didn't know my business. And now with a group like Collective Genius or, just a group of like-minded individuals, you can go in and say, hey, I want to be held accountable. Please make sure that I stay on task.
Right.
Once you're an adult, if you can't do it yourself, ask for help, and that, I think that would be the answer to that question is simply just, if you feel like you're getting offline, be smart enough and the other one is write down. Like, I think too many people just have it up here, and so then their brain, they don't know. But if you write down your goals and push towards your goals on a daily, weekly, or monthly, or quarterly basis, that certainly gives clarity of purpose as well.
Absolutely. And I love what you said, finding 4 or 5 people trying to do what you're trying to do. Because we know your frame of reference is the single biggest predictor of success.
Collaboration over isolation. Don't live with your head in the sand trying to, it's not you versus the world. It's the world is here to help you.
Right. I haven't heard it put that way before. I think that's awesome. So we already talked about your superpower. You want to elaborate on it?
Yeah, I think, as a golfer, I enjoy, I hate making bogeys more than I enjoy making birdies. In fact, there's a joke at the club that I'm the best par putter at the club, right? Because they know I hate to make a bogey, but I'm not aggressively chasing the birdies. I think a little too conservative by nature, perhaps, but I hate to lose. And in business, I certainly can't stand it. And, that would be my superpower is just an extreme competitive nature.
Got it. So, and I'm asking this question because the next question is, how do you stay motivated? Or is that not even?
Honestly, the business now is kind of running out without me. And so the motivation has changed. The motivation for me is more fun when I'm not in the whirlwind. I'm not in the day-to-day. I think the motivation for me is how do I find more people? And that's fun, getting to meet new people and bring them on board and change lives. The motivation to me is kind of, looking at the numbers and trying to grow and impact more people. The great thing with our operation is that at the end of the day, we're rehabbing ugly houses and providing quality rental properties to tenants and then selling those full turnkey assets to investors. Like win-win-win, right? Like we're really trying to, in every stage along the way, unless we drop the ball, we should be enriching lives and changing neighborhoods. And so, the motivation for me is just there. It's like, hey guys, how many more of these can we do?
But then what is your biggest struggle?
Talent. Which is why we hired someone specifically for that. I think in any small business, and maybe in any business, people, as you said, it always comes back to people. And making sure that you have central alignment of vision, commonalities of goals and strengths, and just getting the most talented individuals, knowing that when you train them and do things right, they're going to leave one day.
Right.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think the stressor, back to our earlier point about, what a solopreneur maybe does poorly is they hope that person they want to pay someone maybe of lesser talent, thinking that other talent will come in and steal their business idea and go do it themselves. Hey, go get that person for 2 years and help. They will double but just make sure you account for and write down everything they do.
Right.
And that's what Chris has really done well. And all our staff has done well is documenting our core processes and procedures and putting videos together so that if there's someone elevating or leaving to go do something else, there'll always be someone that can come in and kind of get a quick start or head start based on the training that is already in place. But Chris said it best when he came on board. He said, Mark, I want to build a bench. Every NBA team, every NFL team, any good team has a bench. that can come in at any good time. And it's our goal right now to not only have our core staff, but to build a bench of potential hires or just networking in the industry to know that you could potentially bring someone on board as you grow and scale, like we are, to bring more people on into the fold. So that's something we're excited about.
I think that's something that we all kind of forget, because we want to hire, and when we need to hire, we got to start anew. Having a bench helped that a lot. Eric Salgado wants to know, what is your favorite book? Or what are your favorite books?
There's one, actually, the book that I have given away the most to people is called The Legend of the Monk and the Merchant. Have you heard that one before?
I have not heard that one.
So Terry Faber wrote a book called The Legend of the Monk and the Merchant. One of my favorite, I'm a fable guy, right? So that's why I love Patrick Lencioni's books, because they're always told in a story, and then they have kind of like 2/3 story and then 1/3 principles. I love the way he writes his books. The Legend of the Monk and the Merchant kind of talks about faith-based living and Christianity and capitalism, and how they don't have to be competing elements, that they work together. And that was something that at a time, it spoke to me at a time in my life when, I was starting to make some money and not feeling guilty, but just like, like what does that look like? And when we tithe and give back, and how much, and what do we do with money that we're making? It just freed me up to know that, money is not bad. Money is not the root of all evil. The love of money is the root of all evil. But it really goes deeper in talking about how these two can actually help each other. And there's so much philanthropic efforts out there. I mean, gosh, Jason Medley's an amazing example of that, right? With collective genius and generous genius, that's kind of the blending of the two. This book is a wonderful fable of capitalism and philanthropy coming together. So yeah, that's a really good book.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember when I was going through, I think it was the Total Money Makeover, but it was one of those Dave Ramsey books. And I was surprised at how many of his chapters would include a verse from the Bible that was relevant. It's like, wow, there was so much wisdom.
Yeah.
There is so much wisdom.
The Bible talks about money quite a lot.
It does. It does not shy away from that. Okay, so Gavin's follow-up question: can you burr and keep everything as well? This way you have upfront cash for acquisition, and if you get a steady flow and schedule it going, could be a machine.
Let me just say, in this market, it's going to be challenging to, do in the old ways where, you'd have these appraisals that came in so high and you'd only be in for 70%. You can maybe pull some cash out. I'm not saying those deals don't exist. In fact, your core group, or I guess your audience maybe of, wholesalers and bird dogs and guys that are just hustling, grinding in the real estate game. If they come across a home run deal, hey, more power to you. But it's not a consistent, scalable business of just always pulling out 10 grand every time to put down on the next deal.
Well, I mean, I've heard this over and over again, is that wholesaling is a young man's game, right? No one starts in wholesales.
We love wholesalers, Steve. We work with a lot of them.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying, like, no one starts there and stays there.
Yeah.
A lot of people start there.
Yeah.
For a reason. Quick cash to buy real estate.
Yep. But hey, quick cash, don't be that guy that goes buy the fancy cars.
Yeah.
Like, just until you've got $1 million in the bank, don't drive that car, right?
Yeah. Michael Santiago wants to know, do you use social media in your business for selling and advertising?
No, we don't. So we're blessed to have just literally a line. We're sold out of our inventory through Q3 already, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So we have 104 houses in the pipeline,
and they're all accounted for. And we know when they're going to come out of rehab, so they're already pre-sold. Wow.
So we don't need to do that. However, it's a very valid question, because as we're growing and scaling, the acquisition side really needs, now that we have the brand. The reason we'd kind of been pausing is that we had this brand of Best Offer KC, which is obviously Kansas City specific. And now we're going 1-800-SELL-NOW. Now we will be really able to kind of build and bang the drum. In fact, one of our hires that we have built out for, in the next 12 months, one of those full-time staff will be someone just for social media, because, as my podcast grows, as our acquisition team gets more out there, I think you've got to tell people what you're doing. You've got to advertise what you're doing. Otherwise, you're never going to get any referrals.
Well, that's why you were asking, like, was I bringing the whole media team down to Tampa? Yes.
Yes, you are.
Yes, I am. What is the greatest lesson you have learned?
Be kind. I think I would just go back to treat people with kindness because it comes around. It's a very small world, very small world.
I feel like there's a reason why that's a valuable lesson. Something that prompted that lesson.
Um,
Was
you,
it a mistake that you made or someone crossed you?
yeah, certainly my business partnership crossed me in a bad way, and that's burned bridges. No, I don't think I've misstepped in that way myself. Yeah, all I know is that it is a small world and small communities that we live in. I recently just got back from a baseball trip, and my son had transitioned to a new baseball team, and every single person, it was like a 1 degree of separation from someone we knew. It was like everyone knew somebody that I already knew, and so just be kind to people. Gosh, we live in one of the greatest countries in the world, and I'm blessed to live here. I love America, love New Zealand, but also love America, and I think that too many children are now growing up in this sphere of political hypercharged conflict, where there has to be a right or a wrong. There's so much gray area, Steve, in everything that you do. So just be kind to people.
Yeah.
I think if the world was a little kinder, it would be a better place to live.
It's interesting. You're mentioning the burning the bridges. So there's a public relations person I was working with for a short period of time, and he had promised some things, and I paid for it, and he didn't deliver it. I said, all right, well, I'm not paying for these other services. And he went not to like, hey, how can we solve this problem? Or let's have an adult conversation about it. He sent me straight to collections, right? And here's the problem. I have literally referred him tens of thousands of dollars in business. Like, I don't know what was going through his mind, but that be kind was not going through his thought process.
Let me also say this, because that was a question that caught me off guard. I'm trying to scramble, but I also know that I was on an island for a long time, and I truly believe that collaboration over isolation, which I've mentioned before, is a huge lesson that people should embrace working with other people, and embrace, specializing in an area and being okay with that, and paying someone a fair price to go, buy your media for you, or paying someone a fair price to do training for your staff. You don't need to train them all yourself. There's only a finite number of hours in the day. Pay the experts to do what they do. They always say it about an attorney and an accountant, right? You've got to pay to get the talent. It's the same in everything. Get the most talented people. You surround yourself with talent. I would love to wake up in our business, and I know we'll get there, where I walk into the room and I'll be the dumbest guy in the room. I'll be quite happy with that.
Yeah.
The more the business relies on you, the less valuable your business.
Well, I mean, you're the bottleneck.
Genius with 1,000 helpers, and I am no longer the bottleneck, Steve. So I'm excited
awesome
for that.
Well, I showed you that accountability chart.
Yes, sir.
I was most certainly the bottleneck. And then along those same lines, is there a favorite, best, or most interesting failure?
The best failure. I've bought some bad houses over the years that have turned out just fantastic on the back end. I once bought a house that was absolutely a tear down that probably shouldn't have bought. Probably one of those instances where I wanted to outbid the guy on the courthouse steps, so overpaid for it. But then
competitive spirit might have gotten away.
Got away from it, yeah. But then the government came in and just 3 months later, eminent domained the house and paid me like way more than what it was worth.
Well, that's awesome.
So that was an epic failure that was like super cool on the back end.
Yeah.
I will also encourage people, real estate is a vehicle where it lets you get away with really, really bad decisions through time. So you can just go buy, and time will take care of it will heal all wounds. So I think there should be less consternation about what and where and exactly how we're holding on to these assets. Don't wait to buy real estate, go buy real estate, right? Don't wait to buy real estate and wait. Yeah. Just wait it out. Real estate is an amazingly safe vehicle.
And Andrew has this question here is, are you hiring?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we are hiring in, actually, I think even if we have a corporate website, if you go to apply@sbd.com, it goes through all of our open positions currently. And I think there's 6 or 7 of them.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So I want you to think about what you want to leave the listeners with while I make just a quick couple of announcements. Guys, we got our sales training coming up next month. If you guys are interested, send me a DM. And if you guys are getting value today, please like, subscribe, share, comment. It really helps us, helps the algorithms. we can create more millionaires. So what are your last thoughts?
I think if I'm speaking to your audience, Steve, as I understand it, a lot of them, could be kind of getting into real estate or certainly been in just a few years. You guys are blessed, right? I mean, real estate, I feel so passionately about that it's such a great vehicle. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. The most heavily marketed investment strategy out there is the stock market. Just invest money. The accumulate and then deplete and hope you don't run out. Real estate is that asset class where you buy assets, they spit off passive income, and you never need to sell them. And if you buy enough of it, you got enough to live on where you never need to sell the assets. Life-changing prosperity through real estate. Mm-hmm. So don't lose sight of the fact that you're just trading and transacting and making a lot of money now to make yourself look really good. Just put some away and not cash in the bank. Leave it in the house. Hold houses, hold real estate, and then send me a thank you card 20 years from now.
Why do you think, this is just a follow-up question, don't normally do this, but why do you believe the stock market is marketed so much more than real estate?
Has to be. You're gambling, right? I mean, so... No, why do I think that? You got to do something with your money. It's obviously there for a reason. I'm all about diversification. I mean, when I sit down with a wealthy individual, I don't tell them pull all your money out of the market. Mm-hmm. I say if you have liquid assets that you're looking to diversify or get into something else, then we'd be happy to cater to that need. But yeah, it's just a hyper-competitive market. And it's something that needs to be done through someone else because it is extremely confusing. If you try and do that on your own, good luck, right? Mm-hmm. Day trading, I mean, good luck. So... yeah. Hyper competitive, very challenging, and so it has to be done through a professional. But yeah, it's gambling, mate.
What it feels like, it definitely feels like legal gambling. So if someone wanted to get a hold of you, how would they do that?
So our website is mistakefreerealestate.com. My book is on there, the podcast, and then if we have any wholesalers out there that are in any of those markets that I mentioned, Steve, that we're growing into, obviously not in all of those just yet, but would love to start working with more wholesalers. Like I say, I mean, we've paid out $1 million last year in wholesale fees, and we want to double that. So we want to help your millionaires that are going to become millionaires. So yeah, go to info@mistakefreerealestate.com, and we'll be ready to take some emails through there.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steve.
Absolute blast. Thank you guys for watching.
Disruptors. Yeah, see we real estate disruptors. Can't nobody touch us. And yeah, we about to give you game. Shout out to Steve Train. Real estate